All right. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome, one and all, to Impolite Company on the WGCPR.live network. This is actually pretty exciting. This is the beginning of my second season for this. I did a whole year last year, and we're starting off with season 2 here. So in Impolite Company, if I could say the name, we defy the old adage and dive headfirst into religion and politics. You know, those things you're not supposed to talk about in polite company. I'm your host, Matthew Best, here to walk with everyone in honest dialogue and showcase the power of seeing the humanity of people with different perspectives. If you're listening, you can send me questions, comments at contactimpolitecompany@gmail.com. And you can find previous episodes on popular podcasts like iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can find us on YouTube. Just look for the Impolite Company logo on that's behind us here. You can dive further into topics that we talk about by going to my blog, which is pastormatthewbest.com. And if you enjoy what we're doing, you want to support it, you can do that through buymeacoffee.com/Impolite Company. Before we dive into today's episode, I always do this. I talk about a couple of things that I really care about. The first is if you want to show some love to Christ Lutheran Church here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, in the heart of Allison Hill. It's a church that I serve as the pastor. I'm also the executive director of the health ministries. What makes this place so special is that we host 3 free health clinics. And since 2018, there have been over 100,000 visits, which is a huge impact. And we certainly always are looking for the supportive community. We don't receive any type of federal or state money, so we survive on donations. So if you want to do that, christharrisburg.org/donate. If you care about homelessness, you can check out the Memorial Blanket Project. And each year people make blankets for complete strangers. We've had people make them from such great distances. Last year we had somebody from Australia make a blanket and send it in. It's really powerful. Those blankets are put on display, different locations, and then they're handed out at the end of the night. We've done that in a variety of places: Carlisle, Pennsylvania, front lawn, west lawn of the U.S. Capitol, on the steps of the Pennsylvania Capitol. Last year we were in front of the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia. This year we're going to Denver, Colorado. So you can find out more at memorialblanket.org. And lastly, if you're looking for a tool to help you with difficult conversation around gun violence, I recommend American Roulette. It's a fiction book. I'm one of the authors of it. It follows the lives of 8 characters over the course of one day until the event happens. We offer no solutions. The point is to focus on the humanity in there, the part that's really missing in so much of the conversation around gun violence. We get locked up in an abstract debate and we lose sight of the humanity. Every penny of any type of what would be profit goes to organizations that address gun violence. And so the authors, this is just a loving act that we did. So today I'm really excited and pleased to welcome Shaylee Gupta-Barnes, who is the Policy and Research Director of the Kairos Center and the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. She has a background in law, economics, and human rights, and has been working with and for poor and low-income communities for nearly 20 years. Her most recent report, A Matter of Survival, offers a model for organizing projects of survival to both meet material needs and build long-term political power. Shaylee, thank you so much for coming on the show. Absolutely. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, thank you so much. So I want to give a little bit of some time also to tell us, the Kairos Center may not be familiar to folks. So maybe if you could say a little bit about what is the Kairos Center? What do you all do? That's great. And what's the relationship with the Kairos Center and the Poor People's Campaign? Right. Right. Mm. Yeah, I think that's really helpful because there's a lot of folks who may be listening and have no idea what any of these things are. Maybe they've heard of the Poor People's Campaign, but they don't really know a whole lot. So I think that's really kind of helpful for folks. So I want to dive in a little bit into the report that I mentioned in the intro. It's called A Matter of Survival. I have my own copy right here, and people can find it online, of course. And in this work, you share stories, strategies of what I would say are innovative ways that people are able to survive in the midst of terrible circumstances, right? What brought this project about? What was the inspiration for it? And why frame it as a matter of survival? Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sure. Hmm. Wow. Yeah, that's really interesting. I wish I had known that a few hours earlier, because I actually preached. I had quoted a little piece from A Matter of Survival in my sermon today, and one of the things that I talked about was that it's not just survival, especially when it's linked with justice and love and all those type of things. It's sacred survival. And that's a lot of the sense that I hear you talking about, and it's also a form of resistance as well, in a great way of that. So, a lot of and I have a background in politics, and so oftentimes it's like a first language for me. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it is what it is. But often I think in terms of narratives. And what I really sense in this report is a moral narrative that challenges the kind of the dominant political narrative that's out there about policy and about poverty in the U.S. What's your hope, or what have you seen as far as how this has had an impact on that? Right. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Mm. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Mm. Right. Right. Yeah, a lot of times that just reminds me of kind of the original Greek meaning of politics, right? The polis, the group of people. It's about how power is utilized, how decisions are made, and it's about the common good. All that type of stuff has to do with what politics is, and versus what happens. And I've talked about this a lot, is the difference between politics and partisanship. So often I'll hear colleagues who will preach a sermon about justice, and they'll get complaints from people in their congregation, and they'll say, "Oh, you're being too political." And what they really mean, oftentimes, are I hear that through a partisan lens, and the reality is God is political, and there is a politics to morality, and there is a politics to being in community and all that type of stuff, and I think that's really important, because politics in and of itself is neither good nor bad. It's a neutral thing, and it's not, and we have this lens that, oh, politics is always this terrible. No, it's a necessary part of life, right? I mean, if as long as we're going to have that a society, a social contract of some sort, we're going to do politics. And the question is, are we going to do it well and in a healthy way, or are we going to do it in an unhealthy way, in a toxic way that's harmful? Which kind of gets me into the next question I want to ask you, which has to do with this word survival. You've been talking about it, and I'm curious if and maybe I didn't give you this question ahead of time, so but it came to me of, has the definition of survival shifted over time, at least in the American context, or in a larger context? Would you say, how has it shifted? Which I suspect it has, but how may that have shifted? And maybe where have you seen that? Mm, right. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. 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 Right. Right. And of course, you won't find that on anybody's death certificate, right? But we'll see all the effects of poverty, right? Poor health, or again, homelessness doesn't show up on the death certificate. But my gosh, like I know people who have lived homeless for years, and they die because you're not humans aren't meant to live like that for very long, right? There's a reason why, hundreds of, thousands of years ago or whatever it was, when we were small little tribes and living outside and all that, that the average age was, younger than me, by far, right? Yeah. So this is, yeah. And 140 million. I just want people to take that in. I've heard that statistic before. And it's such a huge number that it almost feels unrealistic. It almost feels comical in a way of like, oh, what? Can people even envision, like, if we took the population of the United States, 140 million, if you took everybody in the state of Pennsylvania, what is there, like 12 million, something like that, 11 million people in Pennsylvania, how many people in New York, how many in Virginia? Like, we're looking at a good portion of the East Coast, where there's the majority of the population is east of the Mississippi. There's a huge segment of that. If we were just counting raw numbers of entire states. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sure. Right. 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 And that's if it's accurate. Like exactly, right. I've done the point in time counts before, where like, I think there's a reason why those occur at night in January when it's cold and freezing, because we're not going to find everybody. It's almost on purpose, because if we found everybody, my gosh, we're underfunded to deal with it, and that means we're going to have to devote more resources to actually dealing with this. So, let's do this on a cold day in January when it's likely that you're not going to find everybody, and then their numbers look not as bad as what the reality actually is. And if you find people, well, good luck. It's not like people are like, oh yeah, I'm over here. That people are just trying to survive and whatnot. So yeah, it's an absolutely huge thing, and I appreciate, and I have said this before, same thing that you're saying. It's mind-boggling to me that the world's richest country in history has a poverty problem, that we've got more than enough resources, like you were saying, to take care of all this stuff, and yet what are we doing? We don't. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Right. Yeah. Right. 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 Yeah. Right. Right. I think part of the challenge is that you've got people who are in the middle class who I think if they were honest, they would be honest about being afraid of that this could be them. And it doesn't take much either. Lose your job, and how many people have enough not only to go for 3 months, like whatever the recommended is of you got to have enough money for 3 months to pay this that, but even a month. There are a lot of folks who have a pretty decent income that are just getting by because of the cost of things. I mean, like I live in Cumberland County, which is just outside of Harrisburg. It's on the other side of the Susquehanna River. It's the fastest growing county in Pennsylvania. And the housing, I remember having a conversation, the same house in Cumberland County costs $40,000 more than in Dauphin County, which is literally on the other side of the river. $40,000 difference for the same size, same kind of setting. We're not talking about dramatic changes or anything. And there's plenty of this, like there's these $500,000 homes going up, which I'm like, where are people getting this kind of money? It's insane. But where is the affordable housing? That's what we need. But then again, like you said, there's the stigma, there's this shame, there's all this type of stuff, and I think a lot of it, there is this kind of fear of I don't want, it's too close to me. I remember in my previous call, we would go to the truck stop, and because people are living in their cars at the truck stop and all this, and I remember meeting a father and a son, and the son, I don't know exactly how old he was, but he was not like a little child, he was older, and the father told us this story. He's like, I would like to work. I was working when all this happened, and something happened that he wasn't able to work anymore, right? And this guy had it all. He had the house, he had the boat, his job, he was working on sports cars, on NASCAR cars, like doing like really, like this guy is smart. He was able to do all this stuff. Married, had the white picket fences, the dog, and all this type of stuff. And then like a country music song, it all just fell apart, and everything completely, because he's never been cleared to go back to work. Like he literally, no doctor is going to sign him off. And so like this whole argument of, oh, they should just get a job. He literally can't. And he wants to, but he can't. And so, like this kind of speaks to this of, this isn't all about, there's that common thing of, oh, they should work harder and that type of thing. Well, I know plenty of people who survival is a full-time job, and they're trying, and that, if we had to do more, then the poorest would be the wealthiest, given how much effort they put into survival in that. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Oof. Right. 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 And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when with all of those things. I mean, I knew a family that the thing that kept them down was funerals of family members. I mean, like, what do you do? You got to bury a family member, and that's not inexpensive. Uh, you're right. It's crazy, right? And that's not anything that you can control. It's just, here's a family member that died, and somebody's got to do this. Mm. Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 Yep. Right. I bet. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So let's shift a little bit now that like half an hour just went like that. That's this is what always happens in these conversations. So let's talk about some practical things that people can do, and I think this is really important to bring it from this kind of abstract discussion, and especially like this big number again, 140 million feels just insurmountable, right? I mean, we can't even visualize what 100 million people is. So I want to bring it down to a practical level. Leave the 140 million, keep them in your prayers, but leave that aside for a minute. Bring it down to this personal level, so we don't feel overwhelmed. So many people are just struggling to keep their head above water. We've talked about that economically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, all sorts of ways. The last part of this report uh, talks about it offers 5 things that people can do, and I just want to talk about these a little bit with you. So there's contextualizing projects of survival within a framework of abundance. That's a mouthful, first of all. There's centering leadership of the poor and most impacted. There's prioritizing political education. There's believing in human decency and goodness, yay, and using art and culture strategically. We don't have time to go into all of those type of things. So maybe just pick one of those that you think would be really helpful for people to get a sense of what does this mean? Give people some hope. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm. Yep. Right. Mhm. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm. Mm. Wow. Yep. Yeah. That's beautiful, and it reminds me. I've said this in a Christian context. Um, we'll often talk about the idea of Jesus ate his way through the Gospels, right? And that's where the miracles happen. That's what, like there's always around food. It seems like, and as Lutherans, we're really big on like food is a big is a big thing. So so I can definitely appreciate that. I want to shift a little bit to politics. That dangerous topic that no one's supposed to talk about, which is why we're in the predicament we're in. Because we got to have healthy conversations about this type of stuff. So we talked a little bit about the difference between politics and partisanship before. And one of the things that I really appreciate about what you all are doing at the Kairos Center is that it's not attached to a political party. It's not attached to, like, oh, this has got to happen in order for us to have any success and all that. In many ways, you're doing things regardless of what's going on in the professional political realm, we'll call it that, and the partisan type of thing. I want to talk about, I want to just ask you, why has this been so important for the Kairos Center? And how would you say to help shift people from having a central identity, which is what I think we have in a lot of cases, a central identity attached to a political party, to a sense of what I hear you talking about, a sense of community, a sense of togetherness, a sense of identity that's not attached to a political in a professional political sense, but in a political in that more organic, original sense of the meaning. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. Right. Right. It reminds me of something that I learned a long time ago, and I've said this where, I think one of the challenges that we face, and that's become more and more, is a lot of people look to a capital for the answers, whether that's Washington, D.C., or whatever the state capital is in different places. People are looking there, assuming that those folks have the answers to questions, when the reality is they don't. Either because they're so removed from the situation of going on with the people that they're supposed to represent, or it's never been their life. It's never been any of that. And like I worked for a member of Congress. I worked for a state representative, and one of the biggest lessons that I remember learning is these people are no more special than anyone else. They put their pants on the same way. They have mental health challenges. They have other type of health challenges. They don't have special knowledge. They don't have, the special wisdom and all this type of stuff. Yes, there's some of them that are really wonderful and try to do the best they can as far as trying to care for folks, but they don't have the answers. And oftentimes they're making it up as they go along. And I think this is a scary concept for folks, because they're like, what? The people in charge don't know what's going on? No, they don't know what's going on. They don't know what to do about it. And they have just as much fear as everybody else. So what I hear you saying is start with the people around you. And a lot of this has to do with take responsibility, that, stop saying someone else is going to solve this. Because there ain't no one out there doing it for everybody else, right? Right. Mm. Yeah, yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to ask you about this bill that just got signed into law literally like 2 days ago. Um, the so-called one big beautiful bill. There's so many words that could describe it, and I wouldn't use those words at all. But yeah, we only got like 12 minutes, so but I didn't want to make this the main focus of it either. and of course, there's lots of estimates as far as the impact of people losing Medicaid, of the SNAP cuts, and all these type of things, of all these folks who are going to be impacted in very direct ways, and that's not counting the numerous other folks who are going to be impacted in indirect ways. I want to go beyond just even the bill to this, and this isn't anything new. I feel like we're in the second Gilded Age of America. And for people who are listening, what's the Gilded Age? The Gilded Age was the last few decades of the 1800s. And it was the time of the robber barons, who were really clamping down on the labor movement. I mean, they would bring in not just strike breakers, but they would bring in militia. They would hire their own militia and kill workers. And they would, do whatever they wanted for, the monopoly that they had. And then there was, this is the time of the Know Nothing party, which was anti-immigrant and anti-certain religious groups and all this type of stuff. And there was this concern for wealth and all this type of stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we're going through the same thing. And this bill didn't start this for the second Gilded Age, but it feels like almost a legislative official start. It's legislated greed is the way that I have described it. And so I think people are just, reeling from, wow, this happened, to now we're going to have to kind of figure out what to do in response. I know we're here at the church and the clinics, we don't receive any type of state or federal money, but the people who had received some of that money, they're going to go after the same grant money that we've been going after. And people who have been cut from, who are going to be cut from Medicaid or SNAP, they're going to come through our doors. And that's not going to come with any increased funding or donations or anything like that. We're going to figure out some way to help this increased need. So I'm just wondering, are there any initial thoughts or what's going on with the Cairo Center and this? I'm not looking for you to offer the answer or anything like that, but has there been some thought as far as given all the stuff that we've been talking about, this sense of community, of really kind of digging into that and really investing in local words of wisdom, maybe is what I'm looking for, in how folks are going to go forward? Right. Right. Hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Right. Hmm. Yeah. Wow. Hmm. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, when you're talking about that, it's reminding me of a couple of things. One is, you know what we entered after we got through the Gilded Age. Do you know what the next age was by historical standards? It was the Progressive Era. So when you're talking about that, the chaos and the disaster and then the opportunity, I've already heard this with several people talking about, the Progressive Era wouldn't have happened without the Gilded Age. And so whatever is going on now, it's going to lead to something that will bring about some kind of reform that will sway us in a different direction, that type of thing. I mean, that's my hope. The other thing is coming from a Christian perspective. I've talked about this, the idea of we proclaim life, death, and resurrection, right? And so you've got to go through death in order to get to resurrection. And why that's essential is because the resurrection part, we're not in control. We try to be in control, and it don't work. The resurrection part is not a rewind either. It's a going forward. Something has died, and what happened is no longer, and there's something new, and it's usually better. Is the idea with that. All right, so we're coming up on the end here. There's a million things that we could talk about. Shaylee, I really appreciate you coming on. How can people find out more about the Kairos Center? How can they find A Matter of Survival? How can they do that? And I'm reading that right now. I'm literally reading it right now, and it's a great book. Highly recommend it for folks to get. So yeah, go ahead. Perfect. I did see the preview of that, and I was like, "Ooh, I need to get that." So, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on, and this has been a fabulous conversation. I I think it deals with reality, and it also, what you all are doing is providing some hope, or at least maybe highlighting the hope that already exists in that. So, thank you very much.